A logical fallacy will always render an argument incapable of demonstrating its claim, regardless of the content. Please tell me why we're doing this. I have to tell people that you guys are not pretend actors. Forcing your beliefs onto others? Geez, Pete, aren't you the one that said you could never talk to me again because I believe the logical absolutes were absolute? Forcing your beliefs onto others? Geez, Pete, aren't you the one that said you could never talk to me again because I believe the logical absolutes were absolute? Our conversation lasted about 12 minutes before you just lost your mind. Now let's see what your next fuck-up's gonna be.
And so he rambles on here something about science, then he says, however, a logical fallacy is fallacious because it is objectively unfalsifiable regardless of the content. So this is, I sort of, that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, what he said about logical fallacies. Because...
Alright, a concrete statement is finally coming. It's like Pete called this guy Gypster and was like... I'm sorry. Hey, Jason is picking on me. Oh, do you want me to beat him up for you? Yeah, that would be awesome. I can do that. Thank you so much. No problem. Okay, so my description of a logical fallacy stuck out like a sore thumb. Are you gonna tell us why? Because we're getting through the video here and you guys have made a lot of accusations and you've demonstrated none.
That stuck out to me like a sore thumb, what he said about logical fallacies, because what he said about logical fallacies. What he said about logical fallacies. What he said about logical fallacies. That stuck out to me like a sore thumb. What he said about logical fallacies. So this is, I sort of, that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, what he said about logical fallacies, because...
Okay everyone, he's about to tell us why my description of a logical fallacy stuck out like a sore thumb.
Because I had known him maybe for a couple weeks around the internet, and he told me he...
Slow down there, Jeep Rambler. You don't know me simply because you've seen a few of my posts around the internet. Why did my description of a logical fallacy stick out like a sore thumb? Remember, that's what you were about to explain. Because if you're answering that question and you begin with,
I had known him maybe for a couple weeks,
you've already screwed up. Because that actually has nothing to do with the accuracy of my description of a logical fallacy. So how about you actually finish a sentence?
I had known him maybe for a couple weeks around the internet, and he told me he taught propositional logic at universities. And he told me he taught propositional logic at universities.
Liar!
No, I said I lecture on skepticism, atheism, and the nature of belief. Propositional logic and philosophy are just very big aspects of what I do. And yes, that includes teaching it. You guys are so fixated on this one thing, on just propositional logic, as if that is the sum total of what I do. I'm sorry if this screws with your pride, Pete, but I have lectured on logic, skepticism, and quite a few other subjects. At universities, middle schools, high schools, corporations, a lot more. A lot of various clients have hired me to lecture and talk for them. Yet you keep repeating propositional logic in universities as if I'm some kind of boring professor. But I never said that, and you can't provide a time that I did. However, you were in the middle of telling people why my description of a logical fallacy stuck out like a sore thumb. Remember? So please continue.
So this is, I sort of, that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, what he said about logical fallacies, because with a definition of validity like that, with a definition of validity like with a definition of validity like that with a definition of validity like that validity like with a definition of validity like that with a definition of validity like that.
Whoa. Who the hell was talking about validity? Who was even defining a word? I was describing a logical fallacy. That's what we were talking about, remember? Logical fallacies? I even ended the post with saying I have a video coming out that explains what makes a logical fallacy a fallacy, not validity.
Stupid. Yo, you don't even know what stupid is! It's about to get all stupid up in here!
Okay, you simpleton. What would your sentence look like if you didn't interrupt yourself to insult me? That stuck out to me like a sore thumb, what he said about logical fallacies, because with a definition of validity like that...
So this is, I sort of, that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, what he said about logical fallacies, because with a definition of validity like that...
You actually have to finish your sentences. I wasn't defining validity, I was describing a logical fallacy. This is why it appears as though you're the one that's dishonest. You use insults to change the subject, and now we're no longer talking about logical fallacies.
And with a definition of validity like that, I mean, I already knew that I already figured he probably actually didn't even know propositional logic based on some of the stuff he said.
You know, that would be more believable if you actually provided some of the stuff that I said that you're referring to, and then explaining why or how it's flawed. See, that's kind of the problem with you and Pete. It is simply making a claim and then moving on to another claim. And you're right, I don't teach propositional logic alone by itself. You couldn't pay me enough to do that. I'm just as much as an illusionist, if not more. The tasks involved with my profession involve lecturing, teaching, and performing. The point is, you said you knew this based on some of the stuff that I said, and chose not to show anything I've said. So far, at this point, this video can be summed up with two titles. Pete making accusations and not proving them. You making accusations and not proving them. End credits, change the subject.
I mean, I already knew that I already figured he probably actually didn't even know propositional logic based on some of the stuff he said, but with a definition of validity like that, it was hard for me to ignore.
Well, I sure hope so, because that was me explaining characteristics of a logical fallacy, not defining validity. Validity evaluates the structure of an argument, and a logical fallacy points out a flaw in the reasoning of an argument. Much like the straw man fallacy, and the red herring to change a subject that you're using right now, you were in the middle of telling me why my characteristics of a logical fallacy just stuck out like a sore thumb. And now you're talking about with a definition of validity like that. What definition of validity? Where? You can't demonstrate your claims, nor are you willing to even try. You can't pay attention. You can't finish your sentences. So where is it, Glasper? Where is my definition of validity? I can tell you where. Nowhere, because I didn't define validity. I described logical fallacies. I told you in the beginning, you gotta pay attention.
But with a definition of validity like that, it was hard for me to ignore.
You know, in essence, you're saying that for you, it was hard to ignore something that was never really there. Do you know what delusional means?
I mean, I already knew that I already figured he probably actually didn't even know propositional logic based on some of the stuff he said. But with a definition of validity like that, it was hard for me to ignore. And I was already kind of ready to turn up the heat and stop playing so nice with him.
Oh yes, please do. Turn up the heat. Turn it up to the max. You're gonna stop playing nice? Stop playing dumb. This is a really good time in the video for me to make something perfectly clear. If we are having a debate or a discussion, you're not going to stop in the middle of it so you can administer to me what you believe to be some sufficient test in logic or philosophy according to your standards. You know, the standards that we are actually having a disagreement on. That's a conflict of interest. So what, am I supposed to test you after you're done testing me? And then what if we both fail each other's test? Where does that leave us? Right back where we started. And if you ask me some question or test me in some area regarding logic or philosophy and I get it right, it doesn't mean you can tell how educated I am in philosophy or logic. And if I get it wrong, it doesn't mean you can tell how uneducated I am in logic or philosophy. However, it doesn't really matter because both you and Pete are not somebody I deem being anywhere even near qualified enough to test someone else on the subject of logic or philosophy. Apparently, every comment of yours is a trick, a joke, or satire. If you wanted to know my definition of validity, you should have just asked.
And I was already kind of ready to turn up the heat and stop playing so nice with him. So I decided to ask him, I decided to test his understanding of validity. So I gave him what would be called I gave him a disjunctive argument that commits a formal fallacy.
What it makes is a red herring fallacy on your part for trying to change the subject, and a straw man fallacy for claiming I defined validity somewhere when I very clearly did not.
I gave him a disjunctive argument that commits a formal fallacy called affirming the disjunct. And so what that is
when someone is having trouble in debate, instead of demonstrating their initial claim, they quiz you as quickly as they can about quite literally everything else. The purpose of this tactic is normally a dishonest attempt to build an intellectual dominance over your opponent by pre-establishing yourself as the authoritative standard. This mistake is so incredibly amateur and widely regarded as one of the most obvious wastes of time in debate, you can almost identify newbies and beginners solely on this fuck-up alone. It's like if you're having a disagreement about whether or not Republicans are better than Democrats, and your opponent begins by asking, "Oh yeah? Who was the 12th president? When was democracy invented? What state is the White House in? How do you spell cat? Why can't Pete pay attention?" They may be all valid and important, but if the question and potential answer given will not change the consequences or circumstances of the debate, and if it will not identify a flaw or contradiction with respect to that which is being addressed, then it's irrelevant in discussion, also known as a red herring fallacy. Furthermore, when you do choose to subject yourself to being tested in debate, it often becomes a goalpost to be moved at the will of your opponent when your opponent deems it necessary. If you get it right, they simply continue with yet another question, which is the moving the goalpost fallacy. which you will see them both do, not only in this video, but in the next one as well. And if you get it wrong, then they attribute it to their initial claim being true. You lose either way. Even when setting those 2 points aside, the act of testing someone in debate is basically just attempting to begin the discussion by pre-assuming the truth of what you're attempting to demonstrate, yet another circular argument fallacy. Imagine you and I are debating about what color the sky is. I call it pink, you call it blue, so we clearly have a disagreement. So before we debate about what color the sky is, should I test you on your knowledge of colors? If you fail my test, then you lose the debate. If you pass my test, well, then there wouldn't be a debate. The fact that my answers are different than yours is literally why a debate is occurring in the first place. It is equal to saying, hey, before we discuss our disagreement, let's make sure you believe everything I believe. Let me save you the time. I don't believe everything you believe. That's what the debate is for, dumbass. If what we were doing is testing and being tested, then I wouldn't be in debate. I would be in class. What Gascard fails to realize, even after it's been explained to him multiple times, is that when someone is testing you in debate, you are also testing them. Is any of this sinking in, Gaspard? And if it is, can you explain it to Pete? The poor guy did try his best. But then again, he does regularly debate against the existence of the logical absolutes, so my confidence in his ability to recognize rational discourse is somewhat shaky.
I gave him a disjunctive argument that commits a formal fallacy called affirming the disjunct. And so what that is if
Hit that jive jack, put it in pocket till I get back. Going downtown to see a man, and I ain't got time to shake your hand. Hit that jive jack, put it in pocket till I get back. Time and time waits for no man, and I ain't got time to shake your hand. Hit that jive jack, put it in pocket till I get back. Going downtown to see a man, and I ain't got time to shake your hand. Hit that jive jack, put it in pocket till I get back. Time and time waits for no man, and I ain't got time to shake your hand.
we said P or Q, which is an inclusive P or Q. They can both be true. Either one of them can be true, but it's not the case that they can both be false. That's what the truth table is. And so if we said P or Q, P, therefore not Q.
2 hours later.
Or really tried to get anything from that, then we committed a fallacy.
You are boring as hell.
The only way we can derive something from that disjunct is if we said P or Q, not P, therefore it has to be the case that Q.
Eventually.
Right, so, I said, I said, if this is what you say makes a fallacy...
Yeah, except that's not what I say, or even said, makes a logical fallacy.
You suck!